Shalom. In all of these Torah portions that we are reading during these weeks in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, we're reading about the forefathers, reading about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the fathers of the Jewish nation, and so many of their exploits and the anecdotes that are recorded in the adventures are very difficult to understand. And of course, the deeper that we study the Torah, we know that things are not always as they appear, that there are many, many levels to understanding. Of course, the Torah begins with these stories. Bereshit is really a book of stories, and it predates the inception of Israel as a nation and the commandments that we received at Mount Sinai, because the things that we are reading about in these Torah portions are the very foundation, not only of humanity and the inception of the Jewish people, but also they are the pillars of the service of God. Because when we read about the forefathers, they are not only themselves, who were very great people, such righteous individuals that God chose to rest His name on them, but they also represent divine attributes. They also represent the ways in which we can all find a path to God. So, for example, Avraham is identified as the aspect of loving kindness, because as we know, he was so dedicated to that particular commandments and to the quality of bestowing goodness upon others. Yitzchak, his son, reflects the aspect of din, of judgments. He more represents fear of God, reverence, awe. Yaakov, the third of the patriarchs, and the one whom our sages refer to as the perfection of the patriarchs, he's referred to with the quality of truth. In fact, there's a verse towards the end of the book of the prophet Micha where God says that He will show truth to Yaakov. And the overwhelming quality of Jacob is the seal of truth, which is actually an admixture of all of the qualities. So here, in this week's Torah portion of Vayetzei, we read that in the dream of Yaakov, when he lay down at the spot which was destined to become the Holy Temple, the spot of the center of creation on Mount Moriah, he had a dream, and behold, Hashem Himself is standing above him at the top of the ladder. And the ladder, of course, represents the spiritual aspirations and everything that we go through in this world trying to find our way of serving God, with our feet on the ground but our head, as it were, in heaven. Now, we don't find such a description of Hashem Himself, of God standing over Avraham or Yitzchak. He stood over Yaakov. So, our sages teach us that Avraham served God with this overwhelming character trait of chesed, of kindness. And this is how he thought God would be pleased. Yitzchak served God through the aspects of fear. And Yaakov represents something called tiferet, splendor or beauty. And again, as the prophet Micha tells us, God shows truth to Yaakov. It's like an admixture of the proper quality of what might be perceived as two extremes. There is chesed, kindness, benevolence, and then there is din, the extreme of severity, of harshness, reflecting judgments. You know, our sages tell us that when God created the world, He created it with both qualities, and originally He had intended to create the world only with the aspect of judgment. But He saw that it would not stand, and therefore He tempered into the very fabric of creation the quality of mercy as well. And Yaakov really represents this perfect blend of both qualities of serving God, and that's why he is the father of the tribes of Israel. So sometimes we need to turn on or turn up the dial, the aspect of chesed. Sometimes the situation calls for the overwhelming characteristic trait of that moment to be fear. We have to know when to use each in its proper proportion, its proper time. We do need both, because indeed the world is created with both aspects of the service of God, the aspect of Avraham, the aspect of Yitzchak perfectly reflected in the personality and the very life of the patriarch Jacob, Emet Yaakov. You will show truth to Yaakov, the perfect admixture of kindness and the severity of the fear of God. And then, if we really please God, can have the strength to continue in our own search for how exactly we have to serve God, using the right quality of our personality at each particular moment, then we should merit too to the vision of the ladder that connects between earth and heaven. God should stand over us at the top of the ladder and find favor and be pleased with our service as well.